As most of you know, Pirates of the Caribbean is a beloved franchise filled with a wide cast of characters who are technically mostly villains. After all, piracy is generally a bad thing, but we all love them for it. We embrace being scallywags alongside them, cheering on their depravity and living vicariously through their pirates' lives. Of course, the series still gives us a colorful lineup of memorable antagonists, from mutinous former crewmates to cursed men who look like walking octopuses. These characters make for fantastic foes against the legendary Captain Jack Sparrow. But when it comes to the most threatening villain of them all, there can only be one, and surprisingly, it's not a fellow pirate. Instead, it's a regular company man who stands in opposition to piracy at every turn. And yes, I'm talking about Lord Cutler Beckett of the East India Trading Company, the most cunning yet least physically powerful villain in the series. He doesn't swing a sword or command supernatural forces, but he still managed to become the most impactful force in Jack Sparrow's life, and the one who came closest to ending the entire age of piracy. And when people look back on Dead Man's Chest, most immediately think of Davy Jones as the main villain, and that's fair. Jones is iconic and a tragic one at that. However, Cutler Beckett is introduced right at the start of Dead Man's Chest, setting the entire chain of events in motion by arresting Will and Elizabeth for helping Jack escape in the first film. In reality here, he serves as the overarching villain of both films, a masterful one at that in his calculated attempt to wipe out piracy for once and for all. So today, we're going to take a closer look at the seemingly small, unassuming role that had a massive impact on the pirate world, a villain with a deep personal history with Jack Sparrow, and discuss why he is the true pirate villain of Pirates of the Caribbean. And when we start his journey, we go long back before his appearance in Dead Man's Chest, where he already had a deep personal history with one Captain Jack Sparrow. In the years before the first film, Jack wasn't a pirate yet. He was a legitimate merchant seaman working for the East India Company. Beckett was then a rising director for West African imports and was impressed by the young sailor and gave him command of his own ship called the Wicked Wench. Beckett had big ambitions. He set Jack on a mission to find the legendary island of Kerma and its hidden treasure, but Jack at the time betrayed him. Not only did he refuse to hand over the island's location, he also freed a cargo of slaves that Beckett and his patrons intended to deliver to plantations in the New World. This of course sets off Jack's journey to be a pirate, because he believed very strongly against slavery, that people aren't cargo.
I contracted you to deliver cargo on my behalf. You chose to liberate it.
People aren't cargo, mate.
And this act of defiance ruined Beckett's chance of the noble title. In revenge, he ordered the Wicked Wench to be burned and sunk right in front of Jack. Then, in one of the most personal acts of villainy in the series, Beckett branded himself with a P, making him a pirate for life. That burning ship, of course, would be later resurrected by Davy Jones and reborn as the Black Pearl. So in a very real way, Beckett is the sole reason that the Pearl exists and Jack's journey exists, and the reason he became a pirate we all know and love. That their rivalry isn't just ideological, it's deeply personal, where Beckett created his own greatest enemy. And now when we fast forward to Dead Man's Chest, the film wastes no time in showing us who exactly Beckett is and what he represents. When we go to Will and Elizabeth's wedding day in Port Royal, rain is pouring down, but the ceremony is interrupted by the arrival of Lord Cutler Beckett and his East India Trading Company forces. And in his introduction, he arrives very calm, cool, and completely in control. And here he immediately produces the arrest warrants for Will and Elizabeth. And right away we understand the threat. This isn't just another pirate looking for treasure or revenge, this is a man with the full weight of the British Empire and East India Company behind him. And even though Cutler Beckett doesn't appear in a huge number of scenes in Dead Man's Chest, his presence looms over the entire film. He's not the flashy supernatural villain like Davy Jones, instead he's something far more dangerous, a cold calculating businessman who moves people like pieces on a chessboard. From his office in Port Royal, Beckett sets the whole plot in motion by exploiting people's greatest desires. He dangles freedom in front of Will and uses Elizabeth's love against her, and later offers Norrington back his honor in exchange for the heart of Davy Jones. By the end of the film, he does gain control over Davy Jones without even risking his own neck. That's what makes Beckett so terrifying. He doesn't need to be the strongest on screen, he just needs everyone to play into his hands. He is something what you call a ruthless pragmatic villain. He uses everything and anything to his advantage, no matter the cost. He doesn't care about his own ideological framing. He likes to use someone else's emotional or ideological beliefs against them, as that what will set them off into a chain to help his own desire. And by the time At World Ends begins, Lord Cutler Beckett has become the most dangerous force in the Caribbean. He possessed the heart of Davy Jones and turned the Flying Dutchman into his personal weapon of extermination. And unlike the Royal Navy officers in the first film, Beckett is never intimidated by the supernatural. He treats gods and cursed captains like tools. His goal is just the eradication of piracy, and with the Dutchman under his command, he's closer than anyone has ever been. Like, he can use magic to his advantage, which is something pirates cannot understand.
This is no longer your world, Jones. The immaterial has become immaterial.
And one of the best villain-protagonist exchanges in the entire trilogy happens when Jack is brought aboard Beckett's ship, the HMS Endeavour, for a private chat. Here is where we see Beckett is in complete control, or at least he thinks he is because we're with Jack Sparrow. He casually reminds Jack of their long history, noting that there are no strangers to the betrayal. He points out the obvious, that Jack's friends are desperate, which is why they're willing to sell him out. That old personal grudge is still very much alive within the two. The conversation then turns into a tense negotiation, where Jack tries to weasel his way out while Beckett presses him for the location of Shipwreck Cove. Jack offers to lead Beckett straight to the pirates in exchange for his own safety, where Beckett is smug and composed, treating the meeting like a business transaction. Jack, on the other hand, is chaotic and slippery, but Beckett even mocks Jack's compass, knowing that it points to what the owner wants the most. This scene perfectly highlights their dynamic. Beckett represents cold order, empire, and calculated ambition, and Jack represents freedom, chaos, and self-preservation. Even when Jack is technically Beckett's prisoner, you can feel the two of them circling around each other like old rivals. The way someone would say, an immovable object meets an unstoppable force. But what makes this moment hit harder is understanding how personal this war has always been for Beckett. His history with Jack Sparrow isn't some distant grudge, it's the origin of everything, as we talked about. Jack's betrayal years earlier cost Beckett a noble title and humiliated him. That single act of defiance turned a rising company man into someone obsessed with wiping out not just Jack, but the entire idea of piracy. This personal desire for revenge fuels his entire ruthless extermination. In the opening, again, we see him ordering that mass executions against men, women, and even children hang simply for any connection to piracy. No other villain in the franchise has ever come close to this level of systemic brutality. His ruthlessness isn't born from rage or curses, it comes from pure, calculated ambition mixed with a long-simmering personal vendetta. And yet, this personal obsession is what always threatens to backfire. As we see later in the film, when the fleet faces off in Shipwreck Cove, we get one of the most iconic standoff scenes in the series, the parley on the sandy island between the two sides. Beckett arrives here with Davy Jones and the captured Will Turner. On the other side is Jack, Elizabeth, and Barbossa. This scene is where Beckett is at his most arrogant. He believes he already won. He controls the seas through the Flying Dutchman and thinks Jack delivered the pirates straight into his hands. He smugly reveals that Jack made that secret deal with him earlier, leading the company straight to the Brethren Court in exchange for his own freedom. The moment that makes the other characters pissed because he did this to guarantee his own freedom or close to Jones. And even here, Beckett still stays true to his character. He doesn't gloat wildly like a typical movie villain. He speaks with that calm corporate confidence, treating the meeting like a business negotiation where he holds all the cards. He's not intimidated by the Pirate King or the assembled lords, where to him, they're just another obstacle to be removed for the good of the company. And of course, that all ends with the prisoner swap, Will for Jack, exactly as planned. But Beckett walked away convincedly that this is the end of piracy at his hand. He returns to his flagship, the Endeavour, ready to give the order that will crush pirate resistance for good. This scene perfectly encapsulates Beckett's strength and flaws. He's an expert manipulator who understands deal, leverage, and power, but he underestimates the chaotic spirit of true pirates and Jack's ability to turn every situation to his own advantage. This set the stage for the massive Maelstrom battle, where Davy Jones duels Jack Sparrow aboard the Flying Dutchman, where in a heroic and tragic moment, Will Turner stabbed Jones' heart, killing the sea captain and taking his place as the new immortal captain of the Dutchman under Calypso's waters. And Beckett, watching from the deck of his flagship Endeavour, doesn't know any of this yet. He sees only the Pearl return from the chaos and believes victory is still within his reach. With the full might of the East India Trading Company armada behind him, he orders his own attack. And as the Pearl comes into range, Beckett delivers one of his most memorable lines with cold satisfaction.
Nothing personal, Jack. It's just good business.
Here is where you see he's ready to finish what he started, to exterminate the pirates and finally settle his old score with Jack Sparrow once and for all. But then, as we know, the Flying Dutchman rises from the depths, commanded by Will Turner. The very ship that Beckett once used as his greatest weapon now finally turned against him. And in one of the most greatest and epic cinematic moments in all of franchise history, the Pearl and the Dutchman flank the Endeavour on both sides and unleash devastating broadsides. Where the Endeavour is torn apart, cannon fire rips through the decks as Beckett's world is literally exploding around him. His officers panic and he begs for orders, where Beckett for the first time is completely stunned into silence. The man who always stayed calm and control is the only one standing in disbelief. And in that haunting slow motion sequence, he walks down the stairs and debris as flames rain down to his death. And with quiet resignation, we all know he whispers his final words.
It's just good business.
Where at the hour of his death, the man who spent years trying to eliminate piracy through overwhelming force, manipulation, and good business is ultimately destroyed by the pirates themselves, working together finally in chaotic freedom. The bureaucratic empire he tried to build is sunk by the very spirit he tried to crush. And as we all know, that final sequence is the most memorable and memeable villain defeats in all of cinema, and for good reason, where everyone decides to fire on Beckett. He has the most powerful armada or ship in the fleet with thousands of guns, yet he does nothing. And the reason he does this is because for the first time, the man who spent most of his life pulling the strings and exploiting people's desires feels completely vulnerable. He cannot order the fire to attack because he's not in a position to. He doesn't believe what he's seeing in his heart. It's one situation where he cannot negotiate skillfully or manipulate his way out. All he could do is watch as everything he built collapsed around him. And in that moment, the code calculating mastermind becomes a weak, meager fool, a small man staring at his own end, where the breadcrumbs of desire and control he left for others finally turned against him. Where not only was the fact he was eliminated by pirates, his campaign of terror actually made them stronger by forcing them to unite. Piracy doesn't end here, it lives on chaotic and free as ever. And Beckett was in many ways the strongest villain in the franchise. He came closer than any other villain in the series to actually winning. But he also was the weakest in terms of his heart. He underestimated the true, untamable value of a pirate's life, trying to impose order on something that was never meant to be fully controlled. Because piracy is chaos, and no amount of good business could contain that forever. In real history though, men like Beckett did win. As the age of sail ended and technology advanced, empires and corporations finally stamped out the pirate golden age. But here in the fantasy that Disney gave us, we get the pure joy and vindication of a pirate's life. We all cheer as pirates sail away victorious, while the symbol of cold corporate oppression sinks to the bottom of the sea. And that's why Lord Beckett stands out as such a brilliant villain. He wasn't flashy or supernatural, he was just logical, pragmatic, and terrifyingly believable. And in the end, that's what made his defeat the more satisfying. So here's to the true pirate villain, the one who could have ended it all but couldn't chain it to the sea. I'm all done now, and I'm off to enjoy a pirate's life for me.